We're in a time of rapid change and uncertainty. Leadership during a crisis looks very different than during normal times. Join us as we explore what and how others are leading and what we can learn. So we invite you to grab a cup of coffee, join the conversation that hopefully lasts as long as your cup of coffee does. And for those of you who are new to Coffee Time, we discuss topics that are urgent to the leaders of mission-based organizations. And we love commentary, so if you have any comments or questions as we go throughout, be sure to pop them in the chat. Our conversations last approximately 30 minutes, so please join this conversation. And if you do pop them in the chat, we'll try to get back to those comments next time we have another episode. So let's start by telling us who you are and where are you from. We've been engaging viewers from all over the country. We had a lot of activity last week from Vermont. In the meantime, I'll introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Tuttle. I'm the principal and founder of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good. I help nonprofits, schools, organizations, and businesses write, find, and secure grants, and we teach them how to do it. I'm joined today by Cynthia Rojas. Good morning, Cynthia. How are you today?
Hey, Rebecca. How are you? Hi, everybody. Hi, Facebook. I'm Cynthia Rojas, and I am the principal and founder of To Your Growth, which is a consulting firm that specializes in organizational development, change management, and leadership development. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. You got your coffee there, Cynthia?
I do. And it's a big cup.
Woohoo! And we also have Peter Blakely. Good morning, Peter. How are you?
Good morning. My name is Peter Blakely, and I am the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting. I help mission-based organizations measure and maximize their impact.
All right. Well, let's see. Oh, we have some good mornings here. Good morning, Renee. Good morning, Betsy. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Renee. Hi, Betsy.
Good to see you.
Oh, this is great. Renee Callender is the founder of Promoting Conflict Resolution from Boston. So she's in your part of town, Peter. That's great.
Wow.
That's great. Thank you. So today we're going to do something a little bit different, switch it up a little, keep the show interesting. We are going to use a case study on leadership. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, she's gained positive traction for her leadership during the pandemic. Cynthia, you have extensive experience in leadership, especially researching leadership, most recently focusing on leading during a crisis. What do you think leaders can learn from Jacinda Ardern?
No pressure, huh? No pressure. Well, for starters, Jacinda is not afraid of stating a big goal. She has a really compelling vision, which I think is extraordinary. And yet it's vulnerable, right? To have to say something, and her goal, she is stating as eliminating the virus out of New Zealand. And that is an extraordinary goal, and it's vulnerable. And no one wants to fail, especially publicly. But she's also not doing it alone. She told her country that she needs a team of 5 million people to do that. And I thought, wow, she just called her country her team. And talk about being able to get behind someone's vision. That's like embracing everybody. We can only do this together. And if you remember, JFK did the same thing when he was adamant that we were going to place a man on the moon. He was very clear that this was not about putting one man on the moon. It was about putting an entire nation on the moon. And so the big goal is the biggest takeaway that we're learning watching Jacinda in New Zealand. And she has no fear, or at least she's not demonstrating her fear, and no vulnerability. And so I wonder, for our viewers, have any of you ever been led by someone who inspired you through a vision? Give us your comments.
You know, one of the things that stood out to me about PM Ardern's leadership during this period was that she set a very clear and measurable goal and helped people, helped bring people along with a set of metrics. People understood where they were. In this case, she had specifically set up these levels relative to the containment of COVID virus in the country. So now this let her off the hook a little bit. She doesn't have to micromanage the process because people knew what was going to be asked of them at different levels, and helped people to understand changes as they were happening because these levels had been set out in advance. It seemed clear and fair.
I think her communication is very clear, very, very concise, and she takes a very complicated issue. I mean, the virus, an entire country of 5 million people, and all the other things that she has to take care of. And she puts this metrics, it's 4 levels.
Yep.
And they're clearly defined. And she spent a considerable amount of time teaching the country what it means, what all those levels mean, and why. And then was able to talk in levels in a way that everybody understands. And so you're right on. The ability to take something complicated and simplify it and get people behind it has been something that we've been watching her on. She's doing a great job at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this lets everybody feel like they have their particular role. They know what their responsibility is.
Yeah. And so Rebecca talks about this all the time. Like, how do you communicate to funders? Clear goals. Be very concise in how you are framing what you do and what you intend your outcomes to be. I don't mean to talk for you, Rebecca, but that's something you've been teaching us.
Yes, absolutely. I first want to welcome Benjamin to the show. Good morning, Benjamin. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Benjamin.
So that speaks to the issue, or not issue, but concept. We all hear the word transparency all the time. That's really important when you're building and maintaining relationships, especially in fundraising and grant development. That's the way we create organizational allies, by being upfront, right? People do business with people they know, like, and trust, and transparency is a part of that trust building, which leaders, if they're transparent, can build trust within their organizations. So that's why it's so important to build trust in your organization, but also set goals. And as you progress and monitor those goals, you're transparent about that progress so that everyone can get together and say, maybe we're not on track. What can we do to sort of shift a little? Or, hey, we're all on track. Let's celebrate that success together and then share that success through our transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing it with Jacinda as well, in that she's doing these Facebook live events. She's checking in with her country. We get to see her at home, and we get some insight into her private life. And so this sense of transparency, vulnerability, her extraordinary ability to showcase empathy has been noted as well. Really, really important when building trust within your organization or with your followers or with your employees. It's very key. So it's a great point, Rebecca, this idea of transparency and vulnerability. Vulnerability. I mean, how do you go in front of the world and say, we're going to eliminate this virus? And she's done a pretty good job at containing it. A pretty good job. Yeah.
Well,
yay for data, huh, Peter?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They have a lot of infrastructure in that country that probably helped ensure that they were going to have accurate, reliable, and timely data.
Huh. Okay.
But they also were solution focused, right? It's
Right.
not enough to say we're going to eliminate this altogether. You say we're going to try our best to eliminate this altogether, and here is what we propose. Again, with the big goal, right? And the steps along the way, making that progress and checking yourself if the progress isn't going as planned. But it's feel like they had a pretty big goal with a pretty big solution focus to get to where they are. So that's terrific.
And then they had that structure that lets individuals and industries and local governments problem solve within the context of that larger goal, right? Because they know what level they're at and they know what steps they need to take. So, for example, if they were at a level that required certain industries to close or to change their processes, they knew why and what they needed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and we have someone in the comments who Ivy from Ghana.
Wow, welcome. Welcome. That's great.
Please tell us where you're from. Myra LaSalle is back. She's from New York. Welcome, Myra. Thank you for joining us.
That's great. Yeah, we have quite a few people on with us today, so feel free to introduce yourself. And if you have any questions, Cynthia, go ahead.
We had a question earlier on. Have you ever had a leader that inspired you with their vision? You can say yes. You can give us their name. You can do a shout out, or you can tell us what their vision was. But God bless our leaders with big vision, because they're so inspiring, so inspiring. Another thing I want to add that she did, I mentioned it before, but it really deserves talking about, is this concept of, I need a team of 5 million people. Yeah. JFK said it when he said, I'm not sending a man to the moon, I'm sending an entire nation. Like this idea of join me, right? The goal in New Zealand is very clear. We are against COVID-19. People aren't breaking up and having fights internally and with each other. No, it's New Zealand against this virus. Really clear. I mean, she's very sharp and concise and clear in her communication, and I can't say it enough. And she brings people along. She rallies people.
How do you set those goals, Cynthia? And Peter, how do you determine what a big goal is, and how do you set big goals? I mean, that in and of itself, I think you have to be brave as a leader to take that leap, because we're not just talking about, I use fundraising, for example. We want to write this many grants this year and raise this much money and conduct this many programs, right? It's bigger picture. You talked about vision, Cynthia. So what does it take to be able to set those goals? I think our viewers would probably like to hear from you a little bit more on that. Yeah. I know I would.
Peter, do you want to start, or?
Well, yeah, I can say from my perspective, what makes a powerful goal is it is based in some sense of reality. It is clearly defined. It has the characteristics that some people might call a SMART goal, right? It's measurable and whatever else that stands for, actionable and time bound. It is ambitious without being impossible. It's very focused, very, very focused. I think some organizations make the mistake of having 5 or 10 top goals, right? And in my opinion, if you have more than 2 priorities, you have no priorities, right? There's only one. So I think that all of those are characteristics of a powerful goal.
I like that. I'm writing that down. Ambitious without being impossible. I love snagging that. I'm be a smoke taker.
Some organizations throw out goals like, we're going to go from raising $50,000 this year to raising $6 million next year. And the staff can't rally around that. They feel defeated before they even start. But if you set a target, 50,000 this year, 60,000 next year, well, people can get excited about that. That feels like there is a celebration in our future.
The other thing you have to be mindful of, especially if you're shifting and raising the bar in your goal setting for financial goals with fundraising, is you don't want to raise 500,000 this year and then next year 700, and the following year back down to 5. Funders don't like that fluctuation in your financials. It can really do damage to you as a grant applicant. So, and you also want to make sure that you have the capacity now to grow from 500 to 700. And if you shifted back down, my guess is there wasn't enough planning there to keep you consistently at that 700 level. So that's something that we should talk about in another episode, but that's just what brings to my mind right now, just listening to you, Peta.
Unless there's an external factor.
Correct.
Like a pandemic.
A windfall, right? But you make a really good point, Rebecca, about infrastructure. And I had alluded to that in the case of New Zealand, that they had certain infrastructure that, one, made this goal feasible, and two, made it measurable, right? Caused them to have reliable data. But I think you're making another point about sustainability, right? About actually creating systems that support the scale that you want your organization to be at.
And don't be afraid to look at what your neighbors are doing. What are other organizations that are similar to you? What are they doing and how are they doing it? And if they're setting these benchmarks and achieving them, even exceeding them, what are they doing right? And how can you borrow some of that and incorporate it into what you're doing so that you can position yourself to set, your own goals for success? Don't be afraid to borrow.
IVY's SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Thank you, Ivy.
Thank you, Ivy.
Oh, yeah.
So,
all right.
Rebecca, I want to get back to your question about how do leaders set and attain a goal. Mm-hmm. And, I asked Peta if she wanted to go first because as data people, we always have the end in mind. We start with the end in mind. But in addition to that, as leaders, you should think about what's the condition you want to see, you aspire to. And this is fearful for some leaders. If you are in a nonprofit that is dealing with an issue, homelessness or poverty, your goal should be to end poverty, to end homelessness. If you're in a nonprofit that uplifts people's lives in a way like educates them or financial literacy, you should hope that the goal should be that everybody is educated and everybody is financially literate. Those are conditional goals that you want to see, whether it's in your community. For Jacinda, she has the luxury of naming it for an entire nation, right? But look at what's the quality of life that you want your consumers to have, and that becomes your ultimate goal.
Cynthia, I think so many.
Oh, I think she froze. I want to welcome Chantelle to the broadcast. Hi, Chantelle. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Chantelle.
Peta's a little frozen right now, but I'm sure she'll come back. Cynthia, I love what you're saying because when we set, and I keep saying big goals because that's what we're talking about, but when we set those expectations, that shows possibility for people. It says, we don't have to have these same conditions going forward. We can do something about it. So let's all get together, plan that out, see what that looks like for people, and then let's just go for it. Let's do it. And that shows possibility, which shows promise. And that's what keeps organizations thriving. The ones that focus on, we have this, and this issue or problem and it's unresolved, those are not characteristics that we see in organizations that have forward momentum.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Renee has a comment in the, she wants to participate in the future. Hey, Peta.
Sorry, you guys. We missed you.
We were just acknowledging Renee's comment. She wants to participate in future conversation regarding understanding successfully grants.
Let's arrange to have Renee on the show. Yeah, and we can workshop with her.
Absolutely.
Renee, I will message you. Yep.
That's great.
Everyone's concerned about funding, and Rebecca has been doing a great job at teaching us how to raise money during these times and sustain that post
Mhm.
COVID. It's a new day. It's a new way.
A new way. So,
Okay, Rebecca.
Cynthia, what is your biggest takeaway from today's conversation?
I think having a big goal is I think daring, but a must for leaders. People need to rally behind something, and the more compelling that vision, the more people can rally behind it. And if you get people behind you, you will be far more successful than doing it on your own. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway is the big goal.
I like that. That's the power of the collective, right? The
Yeah,
collective
yeah.
mind.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How about you, Peter? What's your big aha?
But Cynthia had spoken before about the fact that leaders in a time of crisis need to be holding the vision and not in the role of administrating the organization. And I think our conversation today really helped make that clear for me to understand what that means to hold the vision for the organization.
I like that. I like that.
Rebecca, do I have a minute to talk a little bit about key communication
Mhm.
messages?
Of course you do. We have
Because
about 8 minutes left, so sure, go ahead.
I just want to be mindful about time, but it's I want to be mindful of the fact we are still managing the response to this pandemic. We are in this country 8 weeks in many parts of the country, at least in the Northeast, we are 8 weeks into our shelter in place, and organizations are still trying to 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 find ways to deliver their services to the people that they need to deliver it to. I want to be mindful of that. But
Mm,
leaders, you have to also widen your lens. You have to think about the future. And in the pandemic, your future could be a month out or 2 months out, but your staff depends on you because we're going to come back to the office and they want to know that you've taken care or you've thought about what that disruption is going to feel like. And so your communication, which we're learning from the Prime Minister of New Zealand as well, should remind people what is your vision, right? So that they always remember. But have a foundational message. What are your values? Your organization had values. And if you've gone through something before and survived it, remind your staff of that, right? Because that's grounding for staff. And when you're grounded, you feel safer. And then over communicate, right? So Jacinda spent 2 days before she put out the levels talking to the country about what those levels were going to mean, right? Before the lockdown, sorry. She spent 2 days talking to the country about what the levels mean and why. This is not the time to just keep your staff, keep your communication momentum of once a month or every 2 months doing an all staff meeting. Zoom is a wonderful opportunity. I know a CEO at a nonprofit where every Monday morning he has an open hour. And anybody can join on the Zoom and ask him anything. And he does it in plain clothes and he does it in his house. And any other time, his staff could not do that. So those three elements, if you can put them in all of your communication, is going to help you as you lead your organizations. And so what are they again? Your foundational message. What are your organizational values? Remind people you guys are strong. You guys persevere. Whatever your values are. You don't have to name all 8 of them, but use the one that's relative to that communication. Remind your staff of your vision, your long-term vision, and communicate so that they feel safe and they know what's happening. Transparency builds trust. Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
I like that. Affirmations are very powerful.
Yeah.
And as we're putting these new practices into place, don't let them go when we come up out of this.
Yeah.
Continue that momentum, continue that practice. People will become accustomed to it, and it will become part of their routine. And it will also help gently ease people back into, which probably, I'll be honest, many of us are scared to go back to work. We want to go back to our job and the people we work with. But until we can feel comfortable in that physical space and get that reassurance, when you're building all of that from the outside, when you go back, it's going to be much more comfortable for folks when you get there. So I like that affirmation. I really do. Very good. So Peta, do you have anything else to add?
This was very helpful for me. I think this really helped crystallize a lot of observations that I've had about effective leaders, and it was very, very helpful. Particularly thinking about the notion of constant and consistent communication, and to keep into account that the people you're talking to are also stressed, and that this event is stressful and distracting for them. So however much you thought you needed to explain, at least 50% more to account for that level of distraction. I think that's really good to keep in mind.
Very good.
Yeah.
My big takeaway from today is make sure you set those big goals and measure your progress along the way. Measure your progress.
Yeah.
Cynthia, we talked again today. We touched a little bit upon storytelling. I love it. That's a great way to share your progress with people, share your goals. I know. I'm reminding you as my leader that we need to focus on this eventually. But so if you have any big goals, anything you want to share while we wrap up today's episode and bring us into the next, please don't hesitate to let us know. Our emails are across the top of the screen, and you can always pop them in the comments or the chat. Thank you all for joining us today for Coffee Time with Masterminds. Be sure to tune in every Friday at 10:30 live here on our Facebook pages and on YouTube channels. And we're going to talk about the most important thing that fundraising and communication professionals need to be talking and thinking about to build a strong base for their post-COVID future. So next week, we're really going to dive deep into that, and I'm pretty excited to be able to do that with you all.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.